I was talking about the need for high-speed broadband and the need for an infrastructure build that Australia could rely on to participate in the digital economy. And at the end of it, we were at the local TAFE, and at the end of it, a farmer walked in. He had a dry as a bone on, and I'm sure it hasn't rained in Broken, or hadn't at that point rained in Broken Hill for about 6 years. He came up and he started poking me in the chest, and I thought, oh my God. But it was really interesting. He said to me, mate, you tell those buggers in Canberra that they should get a move on with this broadband thing. And I said, really, why? He said, well, I can't be a farmer in Australia today and be competitive locally, nationally and internationally without high-speed broadband. He said, I need to know what the futures markets are doing on pork bellies and grain, and I just need to be connected. He said, I'm on dial-up, and he said it's a disgrace that as a farmer today in Australia, I have to operate with a dial-up connection. And I'm lucky. He said the guy down the road doesn't have a connection at all. He comes up and uses my internet connection. And it is really difficult, I think, in a country like Australia where the low-hanging fruit, certainly for some of the major ISPs, is the East Coast. So what's happening in regional Australia is absolutely critical, and the idea of this forum was to bring ideas, share ideas, answer questions, talk about the infrastructure build, talk about the opportunities for the country with this esteemed panel. So I'm not going to talk anymore, other than to say I think events like this are absolutely critical. It's important that we understand what this infrastructure build is, the impact it's going to have in Australia, the fact that in terms of broadband speeds, I think we've just slipped in between Czechoslovakia and Mexico. That's terrible. Anyway, we've got a group of speakers here they'll introduce themselves and give a synopsis of where they see the business in Australia, particularly in regional Australia, and the infrastructure build that we need with high-speed broadband. So we're going to start with Daniel McCarthy, who's the Assistant Secretary and Shareholder of Technical Advice Bureau, the Telecommunications Division of the Department of Communications, Broadband and the Digital Economy. I've used up your 5 minutes, haven't I? Just introducing you. Stay there and go to town.
Thanks, Peter. So, Danny McCarthy from the Department of Broadband, Canberra. Just taking on board some of Peter's comments. One of my roles has been, particularly over the last 2 years, when a lot of the fibre areas that the NBN has been rolling out have come online. I've sort of been involved in getting out to those communities and doing forums, and particularly with a focus on local businesses. I'd like to commend the RDA Arana and the local Dubbo City Council and the Chamber of Commerce and everyone getting behind this here, because what I've seen over the last 2 years is, and I've been to some places rural, verging on remote areas where some of those localities have been rolled out with fibre, and people were sort of, why are we getting it first? And they haven't understood it, and maybe they haven't wanted to understand it. And this was just as it was kind of being switched on. And now looking back at those localities now, the take-up in those areas has exceeded expectations. So I think there's a benefit of telling the story and beating the drums and rallying the troops, so to speak, in that in having forums such as this. I think because people they start reading about it, they start talking about it in the street, and then when those services what we've seen anecdotally is that they actually want to use them. I've seen the evidence. Look, everyone's aware of the government's policy in relation to the National Broadband Network. The policy commitment is for NBN to roll out a fibre network to up to 93% of Australian premises, with the remaining 7% or thereabouts to be fixed wireless and long-term satellite. I suppose what I want to use my couple of minutes is just touch on in the business community what the benefits are to local businesses, particularly in the smaller towns, that by adopting the NBN. And a place like Dubbo, where works, I understand, to commence shortly, and when you think of a 10-year rollout, that the communities such as Dubbo and Mudgee and Burke, I know you're screaming.
Sorry, John, if I can interrupt. That's not none. Can each of you, when you're talking about the microphone, am I hearing you? Just make sure you're talking. Thank you.
Gee, let's talk into it. So Dubbo will they'll have a competitive advantage, because you're an early adopter. It'll be here, and you'll be able to have access to the NBN services. And I strongly encourage local business community to understand it and ask the questions what it can do for you. And I suppose what the government, through its national digital economy strategy that Senator Conroy released in May 2011, part of that is to give, assist businesses with their abilities to learn and understand how high-speed broadband can, assist them in their day-to-day business life. Because what evidence has shown that, using the NBN, and whether it be in retail or tourism or agriculture, as Peter was giving that little story there before, it's people, just can't turn their hands to it automatically. And the government are offering different initiatives and programs to assist those small businesses. And if anyone has an interest, there's a range of facilities and websites that they can go to explore and get case studies and further material. I had a couple of slides, but we were unable to get them up. But nbn.gov.au is quite a good one that our department runs. So there's a range of activities there. So I'd strongly encourage you that those who may not be tech savvy, so to speak, but want to know, well, wait on, this NBN that I'm hearing more about is coming to my town shortly, how can it help me? I encourage you to try and find out more. And there's, as I said, there's websites, and there's the RDA and the local council and the Chamber of Commerce that will be able to assist, and I think you'll reap great rewards for that. Look, that's pretty much all I'm going to say. I'll be here afterwards, so please come up, and if you've got any questions or anything in that regard, please come and say hi. Thank you.
Thanks, Danny. Dr. Terry Percival, the Director of Broadband and the Digital Economy at NICTA. And I do think, as a personal opinion, NICTA is one of the best organisations in this country, because it commercialises a lot of the things that come out of the CSIRO. And I just think when I go to the NICTA exhibitions, I love it, but I'll let you explain what NICTA is and how it works.
Something else I've got to add to the list, please. I think I'm on. Hopefully Bert can hear me if I get this close. Thanks, Pete. He's known as the gadget guy. I'm often called the Wi-Fi guy, and you'll need to Google me to understand why I'm called one of the Wi-Fi guys. But Pete sort of asked us to tell a little bit about each other, that my CV isn't in the brochure. Well, I started out my life building radio telescopes, and one of the telescopes I had a lot to do was built at Narrabri, where they've got a number of very large antennas distanced over 6 kilometres. And so we were building radio systems that were listening only. So they're listening to what's happening out in the far reaches in the galaxy far, far away. But one of the jobs I did there, and this was 25 years ago, was I designed an optical fibre communication system to link to the farthest dish that was 6 kilometres away. And we buried a single mode optical fibre in the ground. And I was just talking to some of my former colleagues last year. I just asked them, is that optical fibre I put in the ground 25 years ago still working? And they said, yes, although we did upgrade it from the 600 megabits that you did to 10 gigabits. So there's a lesson, 25 years on, the optical fibre was being upgraded. It's going 50 times faster than when we put it in, but it's still there, it's still working perfectly. They've just had to change the electronics at each end. So that's something to remember when you hear a lot of the debate going on. There's proof in the ground, and I'm the wireless guy and I'm telling you to use fibre. There's something there. So look, from there I moved to satellite communications, where we were talking about two-way communications. There's something up there that's telling you. And then we were designing systems that would maybe go at 9.6 kilobits, but that's changed a lot now. And then I moved into high-speed wireless, where I was invited back to CSIRO to join a team that was trying to design the next generation wireless LAN, and we did. We created a technology that's now known as Wi-Fi, and please Google that if you want to find the big history there. But when we finished that, we worked on what do you actually do with a lot of high-speed communications when you've got people-to-people communications. And the project that I'm most proud of that I did in my life was creating something called the Virtual Critical Care Unit, which was a unit we built at Katoomba in the Blue Mountains Hospital that linked the emergency department of the Blue Mountains Hospital back to a Sydney-based hospital. By using some old friends I had working for State Rail, we managed to get an optical fibre connection between the two hospitals, and we ran it at 1 gigabit per second. And working with some very, very innovative and dedicated medical professionals, clinicians, we built a system that let a specialist in Sydney-based hospital make an accurate and binding diagnosis on a patient in Katoomba. The difference is, up until that time, people had been ringing up specialists in Sydney for advice, or video conferencing for advice, and all they got was advice. With this system that we built that had 5 high-quality video streams running between the two sites, the specialists were confident enough to make a diagnosis that they could sign off on. So all their liabilities then actually happened. They took into place. So they were actually making the diagnosis and saying the treatment on this patient is this, go do it right now. So that was the first thing, and that was almost 10 years ago. I think it's 10 years ago in November that we fired that system up. So that's what made me think that, face-to-face communications on high-speed fibre optics was the way of the future. Unfortunately, the world stalled at that stage, and I went off and did other things, because basically broadband wasn't being rolled out across Australia, and it just wasn't possible to do this in other hospitals and create different technology. However, in the last couple of years, the whole world has changed thanks to the NBN Co, and my life has gone back into reverse, and I'm back doing what I was doing 10 years ago, which is developing high-speed broadband applications for fixed and mobile devices. And I think that's the important thing. We all have tablets and pads. We also have laptops, but they're all coming in through fibre to wireless access points. That's something we've got to remember. So getting back to what it might mean for modern business, I guess I've been doing a lot of catch-up in the last couple of years, having sort of changed professions almost. I think the big killer